Dave, I know, was a big mentor for you. So when you first came on, is there anything that he did in particular that
Yeah,
influenced that?
the first thing I noticed with Dave is he was very so McAfee, to paint the picture, was in really bad place. I mean, John McAfee had been gone for a while before I got there. He had nothing to do really with the company, and he went off into crazy land and did all the
Actually,
things he
don't
did.
just skip that. The
Yeah,
highlights there
yeah.
about John McAfee. If you haven't seen the documentary, people should go see it.
Yeah, he was. He's really out there. I mean, I know that he did. If anybody knows what bath salts are, those are the things people take, and they go so crazy on them that they eat people's faces off. I mean, it's like the worst kind of drugs you can ever do. Turns people violent and so on. And he did a video on the internet of how to how to safely do bath salts. It's like stuff like that. And of course, the documentary. He was a genius. He's brilliant. But like most brilliant geniuses, he had a crazy side, and I think sometimes the crazy side got the better of him. So
Did he end up killing himself?
no, there's a lot of controversy around that. He ended up in prison. The whole documentary, you should watch it. But he was down in Belize, and his neighbor got murdered. I'm convinced it was probably him over some barking dogs, and it's really kind of almost like a made up movie, because when the authorities came to arrest him, he hid in the sand with a straw sticking out until they left, and then somehow escaped out of the country over to Colombia or some South American country, I forget which one, faking he had a heart attack. And they brought him back to the United States. It just goes on and on and on. And you watch this documentary and you realize, he was brilliant, but he was crazy. And it's highly entertaining.
And then so he left, and
Yes.
then when you started working there, I mean, McAfee was not in a good place.
They were 1.2 billion, which sounds like a lot, but half of it was consumer, which is what you put on your personal computer, and half of it was what's enterprise, which is big corporations. In consumer, they were doing really well. Next to Symantec. So Symantec and McAfee were big rivals. In enterprise, they were doing really bad. I mean, they had controversy around what's called channel stuffing, which, what that means is you use partners in security to sell to customers. So there's an intermediary between you and the customer. And what you have to do is make sure that the customer has signed their end document in order to book the business. So customer signs it, goes to the partner, and then comes to you. And when I got there, they had been just doing deals with partners and loading them up with inventory with no end customers, and that's not allowed. And so there was a lot of people in trouble. I mean, some of them were looking at jail time. I mean, it was really bad. The CEO had to resign, and it was about as low as it could go. And so the morale was, below ground level. And the thing I noticed about Dave, the first thing I picked up on, because I've always tried to be kind of a servant leader. Like if you help people get what they want, you'll get everything you want. And I'm not saying to say it, you have to really live it. But the first thing he did, so McAfee had a location in Dallas, Plano actually, that was a big location. It was inside sales. It was the bookings part of the business, the finance. Support was there. So there was 1,000 people in this building. And then they had the corporate headquarters out in Santa Clara in the valley out there. And it was smaller, a smaller location. But the first thing Dave did when he became CEO is he came down to Plano, and his first day on the job, he stood at the door about 6 a.m. with some bagels and donuts and coffee and said hi to everybody that came in the door. I'm Dave DeWalt. I'm your new CEO. Who are you? What do you do here? I really look forward to being, in the boat with you and helping McAfee do some great things. And so that personal touch from a CEO really made an impact on me, and I think a lot of people in the company, especially in the Plano location. I'm sure he did it in Santa Clara and so on. So he just had that gift for making people feel, like they were important, and because they are. And so I picked up on that, and that's what started a really good relationship with Dave.
So you got hired to run North America.
Yes.
And I love your idea, and I'm sure a lot of people do it, but can you tell us more about skip meetings and how that was one of the very first things you did when you got there?
Well, the first thing
What is a skip meeting?
It's called skip level meeting. So the first thing I did when I got there, because I'm a big believer that there's a book I read, and I highly recommend it to anybody in business. It's called Good to Great, which is Jim Collins is the author. And what he talks about is if you really want to do a turnaround and do well in a company, you get the right people on the bus and you get the wrong people off the bus as quick as you can. And so the first thing I did was I reached out to my right hand at Mercury, this is Mike Fay. And Mike Fay was, he was my right hand, ran the SE or technical organization in sales, and I ran kind of the sales folks. So we teamed up together. And I reached out to Mike, and as fate would have it, he was in an unhappy situation at the company he was with. So the timing was good. And I said, I got this situation where it's a turnaround, and I need your help. Why don't you come over here and help me do this, and let's have some fun. And as fate would have it, he decided to join. And so he and I, kind of teamed up. And what we would do was every quarter, at the end of the quarter, we would pick top performers at front line. So in other words, a sales rep, an SE, which is a technical, counterpart to the salesperson, a person, a channel person, a inside salesperson, and they would be like 15 of them in all. So maybe 3 or 4 each. And we would pick them based on their performance the quarter before. So it was almost like a reward. And we bring them in the night before, and we'd have dinner with them. So that was kind of the reward. You got a chance to meet Mike and I, and we got a chance to meet you and spend some good quality time together. And then the next morning, they had to bring 3 things that were broken. Not 3 things that were fixed, but 3 things that were broken. And we published the fact that here's the people that were coming to this meeting, to the entire organization. So if you have something that's a burning problem, you need to make sure this guy or gal knows so they can bring it to the meeting. And so what we would do is we would go around the room, 15 people, and we would cover, the issues themselves. And the thing we would say to people is there's 3 answers you're going to get. That's a great idea, we're going to fix it, and here's the date we're going to fix it by. Or it's a great idea, but it's not in the budget, or we can't fix it right now, so the answer is no. Or it's a great idea, we can't do it yet, but we'll reconsider it in this time frame. And then if we decided to do it, we would assign an owner. So if it's a marketing problem, we give it to the CMO. If it was a support problem, we give it to Barry McPherson, the guy who ran support, and so on. And then publish that in a spreadsheet so people could see, these are the problems we're working on. Here's the date we gave that they would be fixed. Here's the person that's accountable. And what people took from that is they were heard. And it's so powerful. And the rule was, I didn't want to know who your boss was, because your boss wasn't the issue. Nobody's going to get in trouble. It was a safe environment. I could care less about your manager. I wanted to hear, what the problems were at your level. And the best example I'll give that, I knew we were on something that was significant was when we first did it, and people would freak out because the first person would take an hour to talk about 3 problems. And so I knew what was happening. The other 14 people were like, holy cow, that's 15 hours we're going to be here. What ended up is as you went around the room, the problems started becoming the same. So by the time you got to person number 6, they only had 2 problems. By the time you got to person number 10, 1 problem. And then by the end, it was like they've all been covered. Because the problems were pretty much across the organization, just nobody wanted to talk about it. And the one that was the best example was in Plano, where there was 1,000 people and 300 people on this one floor. There was only 1 bathroom. And so like 3 people brought this up. And so finally I said, are you serious? This is the biggest problem? And they're like, yeah, Joe, you're traveling all the time, right? Imagine at lunch when there's 300 people trying to go to the bathroom. And so I don't know what it cost me, $25,000, $30,000 to put in another bathroom for, guys and gals, and morale went through the roof. And it went through the roof for 2 things. Number 1, they'd go to the bathroom. But number 2, because they'd been heard. And they were like, at your level, you're busy and so on. Why would you care about that? And, example after example, you do care about it because that's what's causing, people to not be happy and hurting morale and so forth. But the key to it is you'll never know unless you have that kind of meeting because the manager filters it and they don't want to bother you with it. They don't want to come to you directly for it. And anyway, it was something that was highly effective.
I love that. I feel like if people could hear that, that's going to help them in their businesses. And so as far as like financially where the company was, there wasn't like any spark, there wasn't much motivation. it was, like I said, in the dumps. Can you tell us about the legendary meeting by the sea?
Well, it was the first thing that we did, Mike and I, is we went to a meeting, and it was some conference, and we were brand new, and we were watching this guy on stage, and his name was Brian Kenyon, and unfortunately he's since passed away. But what a brilliant guy! I mean, he was up on stage, and he had gotten this slot machine and somehow hacked into it and made it start spitting money out in the audience. And so Mike and I are like, that guy,
Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? So we cornered him after he came off stage, and we're like, dude, you got to join our team here because we're here to change this thing. And he's like, I came in through this acquisition. George Kurtz, who ran a company called Foundstone, had been acquired by McAfee.
Founder
He's
of CrowdStrike.
now the founder and CEO of CrowdStrike. So very, very brilliant, successful guy in his own right, of course. But he had worked for George as part of this company, Foundstone, small company. And as typically goes, McAfee is a big company, acquired the small company, and the small company kind of feels crushed, right? It's hard to get heard, and there's all kinds of bureaucracy, and it's no fun, right? And so Brian's like, I'm out of here. I'm not staying. This is no fun. And so we did the hard press on him for about 30 minutes. We had him cornered and finally convinced him, just give us a chance. And so sure enough, we all got together and built this, what I call a first meeting deck, which I think is the most important thing you can do in any sales organization. So what do your reps say in that first meeting? Because if it's not good, you don't get the second meeting. And if it's not the second meeting, you don't get a sale. So we put together and we built this first meeting deck of what we think the story should be for McAfee. And we presented it at Roger's staff meeting at a worldwide level. And I remember when Mike and I stood up and gave the pitch, with Brian's help, I mean, Roger was blown away, and the entire team was blown away because we were literally like 2 weeks in, and they're like, how'd you come up with that? And we're sitting there thinking, how'd you not come up with this? I mean, it was kind of like the obvious story for us. And so that was kind of the beginning. But as we started to compete against Symantec, so Symantec was the number one enterprise, big company customers, and we were a far distant number two, way, way down there. They were really putting it on us in a pretty big way. And so in order to beat Symantec, you can't just change the technology overnight. We literally just changed the story. And so we had